Ladies and gentlemen, the U.S. Association of Former Members of Congress is thrilled to welcome you tonight as we honor this year's Statesmanship Award recipients. Please turn your attention to the stage and welcome FMC's CEO, Pete Weichlein.
Good evening. You are, as always, a very talkative crowd. But if you give us 20 minutes, I promise they'll be very interesting, and we'd appreciate you quieting down a bit. Thank you so much. My wife's a middle school teacher. I wish she had given me some of her tricks of the trade. So thank you so much for coming. Welcome to the 26th Annual Statesmanship Award celebration for the U.S. Association of Former Members of Congress. It seems to me like every year we manage to raise the bar a little bit higher, so thank you so much for coming. And more importantly, thank you all so much for being supporters of our organization. If it weren't for the support we get through you, we wouldn't be able to run our programs like the Congress to Campus program, which had its most active year to date, reaching tens of thousands of students at over 36 college campuses throughout the country, or our congressional study groups, which are all celebrating milestones this year and connect current members of Congress with their peers in legislative branches overseas. And we're back to pre-COVID programming activity. We sent dozens of delegations overseas, including current members of Congress, former members of Congress, senior congressional staff going to Germany, going to Korea, going to Japan. We've done democracy building missions to places like Kenya and North Macedonia. And none of that would be possible without the support that all of you represent. So thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you so much for believing in our mission. And please help me in welcoming to the stage the president of the Former Members of Congress, L.F. Payne of Virginia. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening, all of you in the back. Hello. This is such a wonderful crowd. I just wanted to say welcome to everybody and let you know how much we appreciate all the sponsors and all of the friends of sponsors who are here. So many members of Congress here. Thank you all for being here, members of their staff, ambassadors, members of the diplomatic corps, and importantly, all of my colleagues as former members of Congress. So all you former members out there, will you raise your hand? All right, thank you. Thanks for doing that. I wanted to first thank very much Pete and Sabina Schleit and the staff of former members of Congress for the wonderful work they've done putting all this together and getting us here tonight. So give them a round of applause if you would. And I also want to thank my colleagues, Bob Goodlatte, who's here, who is a co-chair of this committee putting this together, my fellow members of the executive committee, Barbara Comstock is with us tonight, Donna Edwards, Dennis Ross, and Charles Bustani as well. So thanks to all of them and to all the members of the board. Thank you. So this evening is an evening that we're here to pay tribute to statesmanship. And for those of us who are in the former members of Congress organizations, statesmanship for us are people who put country over party, people who pragmatically do the right thing even when it's very hard. And so tonight we'll be honoring 2 members of the Senate, 2 members of the House. We have a posthumous award that we're given to the Prime Minister, former Prime Minister or late Prime Minister of Japan, Prime Minister Abe. And we'll also honor Panasonic Corporation. So I now invite Senator Cornyn and Senator Gillibrand to join me here. While they're coming up, Kristen Gillibrand has represented the state of New York as a Democrat in the Senate since 2009, and before that she was in the House of Representatives. And Senator Cornyn has served as a Republican senator from Texas since 2003.
You'll get your award.
Following many years as a member of the Texas Judiciary and also the Attorney General of Texas. So these two senators are known to be pragmatic and dedicated legislators. They've worked together on major issues ranging from national security issues to gun legislation, and for putting partisanship and for putting country over partisanship. We are very proud and honored for you to have the Statesmanship Awards.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
Senator Gillibrand.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Peter, for being such a great leader and a vision for this community and for this idea that our country is more important and our values are more important than any one of us, and that together we have to work together for the greater good. I think that calling and that frame is exactly what this country needs today. I want to thank the executive committee and the award steering committee, the staff, and all the sponsors tonight, and all the former members. Can the former members please raise your hands, because I saw at least about 50 of you tonight. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for your service, and thank you for what you did when you were in Congress. I've worked with many of you. I just want to talk a little bit about my colleagues who are also receiving this award, but I'm going to start with Senator Cornyn. Now, Senator Cornyn represents a big state like I do, and he is extremely well regarded in his conference. He's somebody who has a great deal of wisdom. He has a great deal of thoughtfulness. He's someone who's considered to be smart and pragmatic. And he has teamed up with me on so many pieces of legislation, but the one that I'm proudest of is probably one of the hardest issues to get bipartisan support on, and that's guns. Imagine a bipartisan gun bill passing the House and the Senate. Well, it did last year, and it's because of Senator Cornyn. So the part of the bill that we worked on was the gun trafficking bill, because when I first got appointed to the Senate, I had an A rating with the NRA. By the time of my election, I had a proud F rating by the NRA. But one of the first bills that I wrote was a bill to empower law enforcement to go after gun traffickers. Because in New York State, at the time, 8 out of 9 of the weapons used in crimes came from out of state, and almost all of them were illegal. And our police officers could not cross state lines to find these traffickers. It was a paper violation, a misdemeanor. So we together made it a felony, 25 years for kingpins, and we put real teeth in it to give law enforcement these tools. We paired that bill with a lot of money for mental health, for violence disruption, which is going to be one of the most important things we can do in our communities for public safety. But none of this, absolutely none of this, would have gotten done if Senator Cornyn didn't think it was important. So thank you, Senator Cornyn, for getting it done. I also want to recognize Mike McCall. We worked together in the House days. We started in the House at the same time, and I knew he was from Texas, Austin, and I said, I bet you care about high-tech stuff. I bet you care about cyber. He's like, you bet. And so we worked on the first high-tech caucus. We've been friends ever since. We've gone on Codels together, and we are so lucky to have him as chair of the House Foreign Relations Committee. It really does matter, and Mike is the type of guy who can go to any country in the world and bring people together and share not only our values, but our vision for peace and for prosperity for all of our allies. So thank you, Mike, for all that you do. It's a real pleasure. And I want to recognize Ami Bera because I don't know if he knows this, but he and I are working on the Black Maternal Health Omnibus Act. So, as you know, maternal health is not where it should be in America. We are ranked way down for industrialized countries. And if you are a Black woman in America, you are 4 times more likely to die in childbirth or within a year of giving birth. And that's something that Ami and I not only want to do something about, but have been fighting to get several bills across the finish line. We got one done last year. We have 3 more to go. But Ami, thank you for your leadership on that. So I'm going to close it up with just one quick story. So I'm from the blue state of New York, as you know. And when I go to my fundraisers and talk to my supporters about what I do, The punchline is almost always the senators that I work with. For example, Lindsey Graham, and then it goes big moan like, oh, Lindsey Graham, how could you work with Lindsey Graham? I was like, well, I can work with Lindsey Graham because Lindsey Graham and I were at odds for about 10 years fighting over the military sexual assault bill that we just got done last year. But 5 years ago, when he was approached by Gretchen Carlson to say, you know, I was assaulted and harassed at Fox News and you need to do something about it. You need to team up with Kirsten. He said, okay, I won't help her on the military, but I'll help her on this. And so Lindsey and I teamed up and we wrote a bill to change how we deal with sexual harassment and assault in the workplace, that people who sign away their constitutional rights to a jury trial when they sign their employment contract, that we wanted to unwind that. We wanted people to be able to sue in a court of law, not have to go to mandatory arbitration, and be able to not have to sign non-disclosure agreements. We got that bill done last year. It affected 60 million employment contracts overnight. So that is what bipartisanship means in America today. Just getting important things done to help lots of people. And it doesn't matter who you're working with. And even from a blue state like me, I can work with not only John Cornyn, but I can also work with Josh Hawley. I can work with Ted Cruz. I can work with Lindsey Graham. It doesn't matter how conservative or how many issues we disagree on. We have this common ground of trying to serve the American people and trying to make our communities better and stronger. And it is my absolute blessing to have the privilege to do that. So thank you for the award tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very well done.
Thank you.
Well, it's great to be here with you tonight, all the former members of Congress. Good to see you all doing well in your post-Congress time, and hopefully you have a larger paycheck and more economic security. But I'm delighted, to, in all seriousness, to be here with Senator Gillibrand and Congressman McCall and Barra. And I'll just tell you a couple of quick stories. One, when I got to the Senate in 2002, I succeeded Phil Gramm, which are big shoes to fill. But then Teddy Kennedy was, of course, the liberal lion of the Senate, larger than life. I'd only seen him on TV, but then I got to serve on the Judiciary Committee with him. But he and Mike Enzi from Wyoming famously were either the chairman and ranking member, or they traded that out depending on who was in the majority, worked together so well. And I asked Mike Enzi one time, I said, how in the world do you, one of the most conservative members of the Senate, and Teddy Kennedy, one of the most liberal members of the Senate, how are you get things done? How are you so productive? And he said, it's easy. It's the 80-20 rule. We agree on the 80% we can agree on, and the 20% we can't agree on, we don't, and we move on for another day and another battle. Well, the Senate, unlike the House, requires us by definition, because it takes 60 votes to close off debate, it forces us to do something unnatural, and that is to work together on a bipartisan basis. That's, if you don't want to work on a bipartisan basis, you will never get anything done in the Senate. So I'm very pleased that I found a number of reliable partners, including Senator Gillibrand in the Senate, people like Chris Murphy, who comes from Connecticut. I come from Texas. We passed in 2018 the Fix NICS bill and fix the broken criminal background check system run by the FBI, and then more recently worked together on the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. Mark Warner from Virginia and I, in June of 2020, after COVID, realized the vulnerability our country had to supply chains of advanced semiconductors. And we saw that in Taiwan, for example, TSMC, Samsung, and South Korea, that we were liable to be that supply cut off if there were another pandemic, if there were a natural disaster, or if there was a, heaven forbid, a military conflict. And then Amy Klobuchar from Minnesota and I worked during the COVID pandemic on Save Our Stages. These are important parts of our communities, our museums, our performance venues. It's really amazing how many jobs are created to support the principal performer in many of these venues. So it's important to remember, and thank you for remembering, that at a time when our country is so polarized and our politics are so polarized, that people with fundamentally different beliefs can find common ground. That's worth celebrating, and I thank you for this award tonight. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you.
Senator Gillibrand and Senator Cornyn, thank you both very, very much. Thank you for all you do in the Senate. And as those of us who served in the Congress know, not much gets done unless people are willing to cross the aisle and work together. And thank you both for setting that example in the Senate. And now I'd like for Congressman McCall and Congressman Bera, if you would come forward. I think we have an award here. So Congressman Mike McCall has represented the 10th District of Texas in the House since 2005 and became the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee early this year. He had also held the gavel in the House Homeland Security Committee. And Congressman Ame Bera is a Democrat representing California's 6th Congressional District and was first elected to the House in 2013 and currently serves as a ranking member of the Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on the Indo-Pacific. In addition to being the longest-serving Indian American in the Congress, Ame also, for many years, has been the co-chair of FMC's study group on Korea. Mr. McCall and Dr. Bera exemplify a pragmatism and a productive approach to legislating that FMC considers to be essential for the success of the Congress and for this nation. And so we are honored tonight to present them with our Statesmanship Award. And Senator,
Thank you.
Congressman McCall.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You got it?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This really means, honestly, to me, this means a great deal. I think statesmanship is what our founding fathers envisioned in governance. And I almost feel like we're an endangered species sometimes, but we have to bring this back. Oh. Sorry. Make sure everybody's okay. You know, Webster defines a statesman as a skilled, experienced, and respected political leader. So I'll take that. It's a real honor to receive this award along with my dear friend Ame Bera. You know, I was inspired by my father, who was a bombardier in a B-17 European theater, bombed the Nazis, served his country, and now it's my turn, my generation, to serve America, not just one party, but the United States, for the next generation. Senator Cornyn and I have a lot in common. His father was also a bombardier in a B-17. He brought me back to Texas. I served as his deputy attorney general. And what I really admired about him was his style. He was a true statesman. And I learned a lot from him and how to be a leader as a statesman. And since coming to Congress, I've really made it a point to work across the aisle on both sides of the aisle. Because honestly, that's the only way you're going to get things done. And when I talk to new members, freshmen, you know, they want to be very strident. They want to just talk about partisan politics and score points. But the fact is, you can't get anything done if you don't work, you know, across the aisle. And I've learned that over 20 years, and it's an important lesson. I was honored to be ranked the most effective lawmaker in the House in the 116th Congress because I worked across the aisle. You know, we have a saying on the Foreign Affairs Committee that partisanship stops at the water's edge. That's a principle that we're dedicated to. We have already passed 14 bills, this House, an overwhelming bipartisan majority. You know, and whether it was creating the cybersecurity agency at DHS to championing efforts on childhood cancer to working on the CHIPS bill with Senator Cornyn and Senator Gillibrand, which pulls that supply chain out of Taiwan and makes it either in the United States or with our allies like Japan and South Korea. Hugely important. You know, Ami Bera and I just got back from a trip from Asia. We were greeted not quite so nicely by the Chinese Communist Party, surrounded by an armada of Chinese battleships and an aircraft carrier and 70 fighter jets. And then I got the distinguished award to get sanctioned by the Chinese Communist Party. So I have that as a badge of honor. But Ami, he was always there to kind of rein me in. I didn't want to cause an international incident. He said, you may want to tone down this rhetoric a little bit. And thank you for that. But we went to Japan, the 7th Fleet, with South Korea, saw Samsung, and then finally ending up in Taiwan. But I always think it's important. When I looked at the spy balloon vote, I was asked the question, do we want to make this a partisan vote and screw the Democrats? And I said, why in the world would we want to do something like that? This is when the United States needs to speak with one voice, united voice. And it's important to be, not to be divided, but rather united as a nation with that one voice, united as Americans first. And as you said, sir, the true test of a statesman is putting country over partisan politics, putting country over party. And I think no one understood that better than our first president, George Washington. When he stepped aside as president in 1796, in his farewell address, talking about partisanship, as he looked at Jefferson and Adams. And he said, the common and continual mischiefs of the spirit of party are sufficient to make it the interest and duty of a wise people to discourage and restrain it. That's George Washington, our first president. My, oh my. I'm always guided by that principle. I see my former teammates out there and current teammates. And you know what an honor it is, not only to get this award, but to be honored by my peers standing up here. And I just want to, in the spirit of bipartisanship, quote my favorite Democrat president, John F. Kennedy. And Jane Harmon knows what I'm talking about. When he said, let us not emphasize all on which we differ, but all we have in common. Let us consider not what we fear separately, but what we share together. So let us begin anew, remembering on both sides that civility is not a sign of weakness. We can agree to disagree, but we can also be civil in our discourse and our dialogue. So thank you so much for this award. It means so much.
So, hey, my staff said, where are my talking points, guys? Uh-oh, I got a chance to embarrass my staff, so we're going to wing this here. You know, I'm humbled to be here and humbled to receive this award. I want to thank the former members of Congress. And as I look around this room and see, none of us are former members yet, but you know, it doesn't stop when you leave Congress. You continue to serve, you continue to show up, and you continue to give back. And you know, when I think about the trajectory of my life, I'm the son of immigrants. My parents immigrated here from India in the 1950s. I'm a lifelong Californian. Great public schools, you know, had a chance to live that American dream, and you know, that's what this is all about. And when I think about the former members of Congress and the folks who are in this room, none of us ever gets where we are by ourselves. We get here because of the folks that came before us, the folks that kind of lay that path. You know, could be an elementary school teacher. You know, in my case, it was my 5th grade teacher, Pat Wong, who was, a radical in the 1970s, but talked about how great UCLA was and got me thinking about college and all of that. And we never know the lives that we affect. So to the former members, many who, when I came here as someone who had never held elected office and had this crazy notion of running for Congress and then show up, and Janine's here, my wife, and my daughter, Sidra, over here. And we were overwhelmed. But people take you under their wings and show you a path. So thank you to those former members that are in here that help Democrats and Republicans. Now, when I ran as a Democrat, but got here, one of the first things we did was, 40 of us came together and formed the Problem Solvers Caucus. So it was 23 Democrats, 17 Republicans. Many of us had never held public office. And we understood, some of the frustration that our constituents felt and said, why don't you guys just get stuff done? So we really did. We just wanted to see if there were common ground. And I'm proud to say that the problem solvers are still going strong and looking for that middle ground and the way to carve a path forward. And I do think, the problem solvers were honored here at the Statesman's Award a few years ago. So that is the spirit of bipartisanship. Now, the philosophy that guides me is, I'm one of 435 members of Congress. I'm a doctor by training, and we're trained not to judge others. So I have to assume that every other member of Congress was sent here just like I was, and they're a reflection of their constituents. So instead of judging one another, we should actually stop and try to understand one another, understand the perspective of those constituents that chose that individual to send to Congress. And if we spent more time listening to one another, if we spent more time trying to understand the perspective of one another, we'd actually realize we have a lot more in common than what separates us. Now, my chairman, Mike McCall, touched on JFK's words of civility. We've got to find that civility within ourselves, not just here domestically, but across the world, right? Because that parent, whether here or in Singapore or in Korea or in Europe, they all want the same thing for their sons and daughters. And we've got to find that civility and that ability to work together because the country needs it right now. That's what this is about. So, as I started, I'm only here because of the folks that came before me, whether that was my parents, whether it was a teacher, whether it was prior members of Congress who helped us be successful. But my legacy is not going to be determined by anything I do in my life. Our legacy is going to be determined by what that next generation does. To me, that's the definition of a statesman. It's not what we do, but it is how our staff go on to do great things, how lives that we touch, how that next generation of leaders, how we empower them to go out there and change the world. So, I don't have a glass in my hand, but if I did, I would toast the former members, I would toast those that came before us, but really toast those that are going to come after us. So thank you, and thank you for this award. Be well.
This year, or last year, within the past year, the world lost a very special person. And he was a very special person to all of us at the United States Organization of Former Members of Congress. And that individual was Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe. He was assassinated in July of last year, as many of you may recall, while he was making a campaign speech. And this tragic and senseless killing impacts those of us in former members in really two ways. One, it demonstrates in this country and throughout the world the personal danger that public servants across the world are exposing themselves to simply by doing what we encourage, and that is to being public servants and being willing to lead. And with Prime Minister Abe, secondly, he was such a good friend of ours and such a good friend of the Congressional Study Group to Japan. So it's now a great honor for me to invite Dr. Atsushi Tsunami, who is a very close personal friend of Prime Minister Abe, to come to the dais. And not only is he a very close personal friend of the Abe family, he's a president of the Sasakawa Peace Foundation in Japan, which has also been a very good friend to the U.S. former members of Congress. Thanks for the audio comment. Please.
Okay, well, it is indeed a great honor for me to receive this award on behalf of our late Prime Minister Abe. I remember very clearly today that the last time I spoke with him was about 3 weeks before the assassination. And I went up to his office and discussed about what our foundation should be focusing on this coming year. And he clearly stated that our work, particularly with former members of Congress, of inviting the member of the Congress to Japan every year, was indeed a very important project that he wished that to see this continue under my leadership, and because that touches the people in Japan directly with the members of Congress, which is very rare in our part of the world. And when the letter that was produced by the former members of Congress, a kind, nice letter of condolence, I brought it directly to the Abe's house, because I was invited for a private farewell by the Mrs. Abe before the state funeral, so that his body was still at his house. And I brought the letter from former members of Congress and read it in front of him, and I wish that receiving this award instead of me, of course, he probably up in heaven, really thinking that this was a great honor for him to be awarded. And I have actually a special message from Mrs. Abe, Akie, which I'll read it out. Right now, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the former members of Congress for the wonderful award you have bestowed upon my late husband, Shinzo Abe. I had hoped to come to Washington, D.C. to address the award in person on behalf of him, but unfortunately, the schedule did not allow me to do so. Therefore, I would like to entrust my message today to our dear friend, Dr. Tsunami, president of the Sasaka Peace Foundation, who has been working with the FMC to promote congressional exchange between the United States and Japan. It is a great honor for Shinzo Abe to receive this wonderful award today from all of you who had long been making efforts through private sector initiatives to strengthen ties between the U.S. Congress and Japanese Diet. I would like to express my sincere respect for the efforts and activities of the FMC CSGJ, which has long played the role to strengthen the bond between the United States and Japan. I'm sure that my husband, who considered the Japan-U.S. relationship and the Japan-U.S. alliance to be the utmost importance to Japan, would be very pleased and honored. I would like to express my deep appreciation for the warmth and the friendship that the people of the United States have extended to him and myself over the past year. My husband considered our relationship with the U.S. Congress to be extremely important, and in 2015, he had the opportunity to be the first Japanese prime minister to address to a joint meeting of U.S. Congress. He said in his speech that the U.S.-Japan alliance can be an alliance of hope as the United States and Japan join our hands together and to do our best to make the world a much better place to live. He looked forward to meeting the delegation of the Japan Study Group, who played an important role in this process during their visit to Japan every year. I heard that there was a pleasant moment when a congressman surprised him that by giving a hat and the golf balls, while they were discussed the importance of the strength strengthening the alliance together. I myself, too, had the great pleasure of meeting members of spouses many times. Each time was a precious encounter and irreplaceable memory that connected us towards the long-term future of the U.S.-Japan relationship. The world faces many more serious and difficult problems now, but I'm convinced that the power that can be generated from the people-to-people ties with the all Americans who share the same aspirations for peace of the world with us will become even more important for the future. It is with these thoughts in mind that I send today's message. In closing, I'd like to thank the former members of Congress once again and wish all distinguished guests in the hall good health and happiness in the future. Akie Abe. Thank you very much.
Prime Minister Abe was a giant and a true world statesman, and we will miss him very, very much. Thank you, Dr. Tsunami. And our final award is given each year to a corporation that is doing statesmanship-like work. And this year, we are really proud to honor a corporation that we have gotten to know over the years, and that is the Panasonic Corporation. Panasonic is worldwide. They have over 250,000 great jobs or employees that are around the world. But a couple of things that I wanted to mention about how they take their corporate citizenship seriously. One is they have started the Panasonic Green Impact, which aims to reduce the company's emissions to net zero by 2030. And further, the Panasonic North America Foundation puts their emphasis on bringing diversity and inclusion into the STEM education programs here and other places in the world. In addition to that, they've been a wonderful partner for us in the Japan Congressional Study Group. And I now invite Jeff Werner, who is the Panasonic's Vice President of Corporate Affairs, to come and accept this award.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of my boss, Megan Lee, who's the chairwoman and CEO of Panasonic Corporation North America, and the entire Panasonic family, many of whom are here today in the crowd, I really want to thank FMC for this recognition. I also want to congratulate our congressional leaders today. It's really a humbling experience to be on the same stage, so thank you and congratulations. Panasonic is proud of our commitment to the U.S., and we're proud of our commitment to the U.S.-Japan relationship, and we're proud of our commitment to the FMC. We are a 100-year-old company, and we're a leader in technologies throughout those 100 years. Now we're in such key areas as clean energy, automotive, aerospace. We still make a few consumer goods. But we have Mr. President, you mentioned the 250,000 we have worldwide. We have 20,000 people in the United States working in these key areas, and it's only going up from here. It's really an exciting time for the company. In fact, we just recently announced a major investment in Kansas. We're building the state-of-the-art EV battery manufacturing facility there. This is a $4 billion investment. It's going to mean 4,000 direct jobs, and we also feel like this is just the beginning. It's an exciting time. Our company's one of the core principles of our company is contribution to society, and I think you raised some of the things that we do to try to give back. We try to apply this where we invest, where we live, where we work. We're very focused on STEM and STEAM education, particularly in underserved communities, and we're making really great strides in sustainability, set net zero by 2030, both for within our company, but for our customers as well through the products that we make. So I'm going to keep this short. I want to thank the FMC for this honor. The programs like the congressional study groups are critical, I think, to the overall discourse. I think you see from what we have here the bipartisanshipness, the statesman focus, I think is really critical at this time, and Panasonic is just proud to be a supporter and a part of this. So we look forward to partnering for many more years to come, and on behalf of Panasonic, thanks everybody. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. So that concludes our awards ceremony for this evening. I want to once again thank you all very much for being here. What you're doing here tonight in this event is critical in terms of our being able to do the good work that we do throughout the year. I did also want to thank my wife, Susan, for joining me here tonight. And please enjoy the rest of the evening.